Thank you, gentlemen. You give us hope. You give us hope. Let me just say that. Could you put up the verses that we were? This is our passage today, ladies. In case you got busy this week, just wanted to let you know. This is what we're going to be talking about. We have Colossians. We're in the book of Colossians 3. We're getting towards the end. Is this the 8th week? Maybe 8 out of 10? This is the verses they gave me. Wives, submit to your husbands as fitting for those who belong to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything you do. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear for the Lord. So I got this sort of because I just picked this week, not knowing what verses were going to fall on this week. And when I was looking through, I was like, there's no way that one will be the week that I'm getting. And it is. It's the one. Not only that, but after Election Day. So I'm gonna title today. The episode is called that one where they gave Marie that really hard talk, and wanted to see how far she'd go. Okay? Because let me tell you, let's talk about submission. Just kidding. As soon as I found this out, my husband came home for lunch, and I was cracking up. I was like, you're never going to believe what I'm talking about in a couple weeks. A couple months, actually. This was back in September. And I said, so what I'm going to do is I want you to come, and I'm going to show the women how submissive I am by washing your feet with my hair. And he sort of thought that was a funny idea, but he didn't go along with it, okay? And then I called Sister, Sarah Ann, and I was like, no. They gave me the one thing that I didn't want to ever have to talk about because, this can be a little dicey. Because these verses seem straightforward. They're not complicated when you read them, but they're complicated because they're not easy. And the real reason, as much as I joked about submission and all this, stuff that comes up, is because the truth is also I come from a very fractured family. I am the daughter of divorce. I am also the granddaughter of divorce. I am also the great-granddaughter of divorce. That didn't even happen much 75 years ago. But in my family, it did. So is this topic complicated? For me, yeah, it really is. It's complicated because of my own story, and it's also complicated because our culture has really messed up the words that are spoken here, and we've sort of twisted the meaning of it. We've used some of these words in the wrong ways, and our minds go to sometimes some really negative places very easily when we read things like this. And I also know that when we bring up topics like this with Christian households and these relationships, I know that there is a lot of hurt in this room because we're human. And it's very likely that you have also experienced pain in relationships due to the brokenness of our world. Also, some of the topics here are a little bit more of what I'd call a coffee date conversation, too. And for the lack of time, I can't pick all of it apart. But I also want to tell you that over the last couple months, as I've been thinking about this and praying about it and kind of digging in, I've been very challenged. And if no one even heard this today, if no one showed up, I would still be glad that I did it because I've learned a lot, and I've really been blessed by the message that came through, which was actually contrary to what I thought was going to happen, to be quite honest. So here we go. We're going to take a little bit of a bird's eye view in this passage. And I want to remind us that while we're studying Colossians in 10 parts, the people reading Colossians or having it been read to them probably listened to this in one sitting. So they heard the whole thing at once, like a little movie. Like if we watched a movie 10, weeks apart, would maybe it feels a little disjointed. But they listened to it all at one time. So we also have to remember kind of in what context this is being said in this letter. Paul is writing to this church in Colossae a few decades after Jesus was on earth. And they're new believers, so they're figuring it out. And also, they're just in the very newborn stages of the early church. So there's a lot that they had to process and shift from their old ways. And so throughout this book, Paul is telling them of these new ways, which we've been talking about the last 7 weeks. And so he's reminding them, I'll just kind of remind you real quick, these are his themes. He's saying you all need to be bound in love. You need to let peace rule your hearts. You are all one body. You are to live thankful. You are to let his word let his word live in you deeply. You are to do everything in his name. And then right before these verses, this chunk, as we talked about last week, he said, I want you to put to death these things, the way in which you used to walk: impurity, greed, lust, anger, slander. And I want you to clothe yourself with these things: compassion, kindness, humility, patience, forgiveness. He just said that, okay? And at the end of last week, all of these inward things that he wants us to work on, at the very end of it, in verse 17, right before our verses today, he says to them, whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father. So that's how he ends it up. He's like, you guys, if you're going to live for me, you have to do these things. But the things that he kind of listed before were the inward things. There's stuff that we work on in our own life. You can kind of, work through them and live them out a little bit, but it really is kind of an inward thing. And I want to remind you that Paul's very careful how he corrects. He's correcting in this cradle of grace as the tide is turning, as these people are now realizing how Christ wants them to live in these freedoms that they may not have known in their lifetime, because things are really shifting. Paul cares very deeply about the home and family and our relationships with others, and that we are to be the example of his love in the world. And so he highlights these very specific things for us. And also, of course, they don't know this at the time, but we have the privilege of knowing all of this. He highlights this many times in his letters. So it is something that we should look into, and we do today in the study. It kind of highlights that. But for right now, he's highlighting these relationships with each other. He is saying, if you are going to do these things, you can be all good on the inside, but you have to live this out in how you are to live with other people in your relationships. And it matters in your work, and it matters in your community, and it matters in your home very, very much. He already reminded them back in Colossians 2:13. He says, when you were dead in your sin, when we were all dead in our sin, he loved us. Like, Christ loved us before we loved him. Let's sit with that for a second. He loved us before we loved him. And so as he's talking about the rules and how we are to love each other, he is saying you need to mirror that. I didn't love because you loved me, or because it was adorable, or because you gave things to me and made me happy. I loved before that. And so he's inviting us into this love, and he is setting a standard in which we are to follow if we are Christ's follower. Christ led the way in his death and sacrifice, and he be a lot of head knowledge, but living it out is a lot harder, isn't it? You can put the next slide up, but the world, you see, the world does this with relationships. It's very, very, very easy to criticize. It's very easy to complain. In kind of a modern world, it's easy to cancel the relationships that we don't like. And we are very good at this, aren't we? I don't want to brag, but I am unbelievable in getting my feelings hurt. I am amazing at being betrayed I am very talented when it comes to knowing what's right and wrong. I don't know if you know that. I have a special gift. I always know what's right, and I know what the people around me should be doing all the time. And I also know when they're incorrect. Isn't that incredible? Like it's just something that I have. I am also incredible at justifying my actions based on my feelings and about how relationships are going and if they're going the way I want them to go. It feels very easy to love God and then take care of our own hearts when it's just us and him. But then we also try to play God in these relationships often and say that we know what's best and we know how things should go. And he is calling us to something much, much greater. So to generalize the verses, we're just going to talk about 3 different things that godly relationships are based off of. Okay, so relationships that are under Christ, what he's asking us, based off of these verses, I tried to just pull out 3 different things. Relationships are under Christ's lordship. There are 6 times in this very small section of verses that mentions the word Lord, to the Lord, that pleases the Lord, for the Lord. And then 1 time it mentions master in heaven, which kind of is Lord. So seven times in these verses. When we follow what Paul has outlined, that Christ is supreme, if you believe what he has said, if these people believed what he has said in the early parts of this letter, and that we are forgiven, it does affect everything, including and most importantly our relationships, even the really, really hard ones. It is not just us in Christ. That is important, but we do not live in a world where we are alone. We have people all around us. And so this requires obedience in him and trust in him, because we have to allow ourselves to be placed under his authority, under his lordship, giving up what we may feel is natural to our flesh and our hearts, and trust and obey, and allow him to be the leader of these relationships. And I think we could probably all identify a couple relationships right now that are hard, where it's hard to really let him lead us into doing the right thing. I also thought about that little song, Trust and Obey. Remember that one? For there's no other way to be happy in Jesus. When we trust and obey him, we allow him to be the Lord, which he is calling us to do very clearly here. The second thing is that these relationships are motivated by a desire to please God. Some of these things feel kind of obvious when you know, in our Christian speak, like, of course we want to please God. But when we're actually talking about relationships being motivated by this is when we actually desire to honor God more than the desire to honor the people around us. Because it is kind of easy, especially as women, I think, to want to please people. But we also kind of want to please people because they kind of give back to us, right? Like, you want to, surprise your kid with something because they're going to have a reaction. You're going to do something for someone else because there's kind of a give and take in that relationship. But those things are failing because we're human. And then there's conflicts, and then things get in the way, and all these motives kind of get all mixed up. But if we actually try if we're trying to desire to please him first, everything else will come with it. And that's what it's telling us. It's a win-win. At the very beginning of this chapter, he says, since you've been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above. Start with me, and then the other relationships will come. As you draw closer to me, this will lead you closer and closer and closer. And I think that it's very easy to sort of lose sight of that. When we're having conflicts in relationships, we want to just go and fix it. We want to do something. We want to talk to someone. We want to send a text. We want to send an Instagram message. We want to find a video. We want to do something instead of going to God and letting the rest come, because he promises us that will happen. That even the people that are difficult to love, the more that we can understand his heart, the easier it will be to see the others through his eyes. And so I think that is such a good reminder. It was a good reminder for me in the last few weeks. I had to really practice this when it was not easy to love the people that were around me. When the people that irritate me and angered me, And, as the Lord would have it, like I had some conflicts in some relationships the last couple months. I said, Lord, you are testing me because I have to speak about this. And it really was such a reminder that it is not, we just like to flesh it out. It's a funny term, but it kind of is real, fleshing it out, like between us. We want to just make things better. But when we can draw to him first, he will lead us in how we are supposed to be loving the people around us. He will guide us, and we just have to trust that. Two little questions I just want to challenge you with dealing with difficult people, because it's easy to love easy people. It's easy to love babies, right? It's easy to love people that are darling. But when they're not, and when they're frustrating, we can ask ourselves, does the Bible prohibit or promote a better way for me to be dealing with this person? And what I say, will this drive the other person closer to or further from Christ? I think those are good questions to ask and to remind ourselves of as we're trying to fix it. Because he does give us wisdom, for sure. It's not that we're not supposed to do anything, but we need to let him lead in how that's happening. The third point is that relationships are others focused. And again, this maybe kind of feels obvious, but here's the funny thing. In this passage, he is telling the wives what they're supposed to do for their husbands. Husbands, you do this. Fathers, you do this. Children do this. Slaves, masters, employers, neighbors. We can kind of translate that in. This is what you are to do. Not this is how you respond to people, but this is what you're supposed to do first, right? You are to do this before they give you anything, before they give you crap, or before they give you love. This is the way you're supposed to do it. We move first. He's telling us, like, here's how we go, okay? We do this regardless of how they respond, because he cares about our conduct and is asking us to treat others in these ways in spite of what they have done for us. And I think it's very, very easy to make the way we treat people very conditional based on how they have treated us or what's been done. We are not only to honor our spouse when they make us feel beautiful and happy and submit to them. We'll get into that word later today in your groups. We don't only honor our parents because they raised us perfectly and left us with a huge inheritance. We don't love other people just because they're doing what we want them to do. And we spend a lot of our days thinking about what we want people to do and how they're going to please us, right? And then after all of these things, when Paul is kind of highlighting these, he says, again, for the second time, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for men. I think it's interesting that he highlights this twice. Let's see, 17 and 23. So like a few verses apart, right? He says this twice. The first time he's saying, I need you to be this. I need you to work on this in your hearts and do this for me. And now he's saying, I need you to do this in your relationships and do it for me. For me. Do this for me. Do not do it because you like it. Do not do it because it's easy. Do not do it because you're going to get a reaction. You have to do this because you love me. He's telling us this after he's highlighting these intimate relationships. And he's saying, this is how you love me. It's actually kind of easy. I always want to be the person that's evangelizing to the world or just making a difference in those around me. My grandparents were missionaries. And in fact, my grandma was friends with Elizabeth Elliot and knew them when they were all doing flight training and, saving indigenous tribes. And then my dad was born in Africa. And I always looked up to them, truthfully, and just thought, this is my heritage. This is what I should be doing something better for the world. And truly, when you really look at this, you realize that if we really want to show the world how we love Christ, we start right here. We start in our homes. We start with our relationships. And each one of us, whether we are married or not, or have kids or don't, or have kids that are grown, or have complicated, messy situations, we all have people around us in which we need to live out these relationships. There's a lot of fun over there. Really, at the end, we cannot ourselves try hard enough. We cannot read enough self-help books or listen to enough podcasts. And trust me, I listen to so many podcasts on submission. So many. If you need any references, I have some good ones. We can do all of those things. We can try out of our own heart, but unless we are putting ourselves under his lordship and drawing to him first and then bringing those relationships along, none of this will work. We will fall flat every single time because we do not have it in us. We will fail. But, holy but God, he says, whatever you do, do it for me, and you will be working for the Lord. And ladies, I very, very strongly feel that our world is absolutely crying for the Lord. It is so hungry for who God is and for who Christ is to us. And this might seem overly simplified, and I don't want it to, but it really, really, really does start with how we are loving each other. And the world is watching. And I started to realize it's not just us with our children, spouse, employers, friends, parents, neighbors. Yes, that's good between us, but people are watching. People are watching how we're treating each other, and they're watching how we're doing this. And I truly feel that the tide can turn when we start to live this out every single day. His ways are new. They are counterculture, and is not what the world is telling us to do. It was not what they were doing back then, and it applies today because our culture tells us very differently on how we should be sassy and how we should be hurt and how we should complain and how we should live all of these relationships and how it should all be about how we feel. And he's saying you have to move beyond that. You have to move beyond your disappointment and your distress and treat those closest to you because you love me. And when that happens, his light truly, truly will shine, and he will be known in our world. So thank you so much. I love this message of hope. I really do. I told my husband when I left today, I said, honey, I'm going to go let them know how submissive I am. And he laughed because we're still working on some things. So go to your groups today. Thank you so much for being here.